Have you ever wondered, perhaps in the quiet, questioning hours of the night, what if the most painful, most confusing relationship of your life was never actually a mistake, but was, in fact, a deeply personal and potent message from the universe, delivered directly to your soul? What if that person, the very one who hurt you the most, who left you feeling shattered and questioning your own reality, was actually your greatest, most formidable spiritual teacher, arriving in a clever, often charming, disguise? And what if your true, profound healing didn't begin on the day they finally left, but rather in that startling, breathtaking moment when you finally, truly saw the undeniable truth they came to reveal, not about them, but about you? If these questions resonate in the chambers of your heart, then take a deep, gentle breath and join me on this sacred journey of understanding. It is a profound and often uncomfortable paradox, one that only the soul, in its timeless wisdom, truly understands. When the wrong person unexpectedly steps into your life, something remarkable, something almost alchemical happens. The right lesson, the one your soul has been yearning to learn, finally begins. The ancient wisdom of Zen consistently reminds us that the deepest, most transformative teachings don't always arrive through eloquent words or comforting explanations, but rather through the raw, unfiltered crucible of direct experience. Life's greatest, most impactful guides aren't always gentle monks in saffron robes meditating peacefully, or wise sages sitting serenely under ancient Bodhi trees. Sometimes, the teacher who catalyzes our greatest growth appears wrapped in the most irresistible charm and captivating charisma, all the while hiding a heart that is shrouded in its own deep, unexamined shadow. You meet someone who speaks eloquently, almost poetically, of unconditional love, yet, in their actions, lives in a state of subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, control. They may build their life like an intricate, dazzling palace of mirrors, a place that is masterful at reflecting the beauty, desires, and even the flaws of everyone else, yet is designed to never, ever reveal the unadorned truth of what lies within themselves. In the aftermath of such a connection, you may find yourself wrestling with the agonizing question, why on earth did a person like this ever enter my life? Or perhaps, even more hauntingly, you might ask, why was I, with my good intentions and open heart, ever led into theirs? These are not logical questions seeking a rational answer. They are visceral cries born from profound pain, questions carved into our being by the sharp edges of suffering. And yet, it is precisely here, in this fertile ground of suffering, that hope lies. For as the great Buddha himself so compassionately said, where suffering exists, liberation is, and always will be, near. So let this exploration today be your gentle, unwavering anchor in the midst of any lingering inner chaos, your quiet whisper of wisdom in the vast silence of your healing, and the story that gently, lovingly stirs what your soul, on some deep, intuitive level, already knows to be true. Lesson 1. The narcissist is not your punishment. They are your portal. In the earliest days of the entanglement, In those first intoxicating moments or months, didn't something about them feel strangely, almost uncannily familiar? It might have felt like a powerful, almost fated pull, like a half-remembered lullaby from a time long past. But let us be clear, with the wisdom of hindsight, it likely wasn't the presence of true, healthy love that you recognized. More often than not, it was the subtle, unconscious echo of your own inner emptiness, your own unhealed wounds, recognizing in them a seemingly perfect, almost magical ability to temporarily fill that void, to soothe that ache, even if, as you would later discover, it was only for a fleeting, illusory moment. The Buddhist teachings on codependent origination remind us that nothing in this interconnected universe arises without a cause. Without the right conditions being present, what we often perceive as random suffering, a cruel and meaningless blow from fate, is very often a subtle, yet significant, karmic ripple set in motion by a stone dropped into the vast pond of consciousness long before this current lifetime. The arrival of a narcissistic individual in your world, therefore, was likely not an act of sheer, arbitrary cruelty from the cosmos. It was, more accurately, the living, breathing reflection of an inner story you didn't even consciously know you were still telling yourself. It was the manifestation of a subconscious vow, an unspoken but incredibly powerful soul agreement, perhaps written long ago in the invisible ink of your own unawareness. I will unconsciously draw into my life whoever is necessary to expose the wounds, the beliefs, the patterns within me that I still stubbornly, fearfully refuse to heal for myself. They came into your life like a captivating, roaring fire, cleverly disguised as life-giving warmth. You were drawn to their light, their intensity, their seeming confidence, but they did not come, ultimately, to ruin you, though it may have felt that way. From this higher perspective, we can see that they came to help you burn away the deeply ingrained illusions you had grown so attached to. The illusions that were keeping you small and bound. They came to incinerate the false belief that your worth was something to be found in the fleeting approval of others. They came to challenge the painful illusion that true love required the constant, exhausting abandonment of your own needs and boundaries. They came to expose the lie that the validation of another person could ever be the true measure of your existence. They never came with the intention to stay and build a life with you. They came as a powerful catalyst to shatter the very foundations of your illusory world, so that you could, at long last, build a new life on the unshakable bedrock of your own authentic truth. They were not the end of your story. They were the end of a story that was no longer true for you. They were, in essence, your portal to a more awakened, more authentic self. Lesson 2. Karma is not cruelty. Karma is unflinching clarity. It is so easy, in the raw aftermath of such a painful experience, to view karma as a form of cosmic punishment, a cruel retribution for some unknown past misdeed. But in the deep, compassionate understanding of Buddhist philosophy, karma is not, and never has been, punishment. It is, quite simply, the universe's most impartial and unwavering law of cause and effect, The principle is simple yet profound. What arises in our lives does so because the necessary internal and external conditions have allowed it to arise. And what remains in our lives, what sustains itself as a recurring pattern, stays precisely because, consciously or unconsciously, we continue to feed it with our energy, our attention, our unexamined beliefs. So, why did this particular, often excruciating, relationship form from a karmic perspective? It may be because deep within your own consciousness, certain insidious seeds of unworthiness, but not enoughness, still had tenacious roots. It may be because your own inner garden, so inherently kind, so beautifully open, so deeply compassionate, was, tragically, still fertile ground for a particularly deceptive kind of weed, one that masterfully dresses itself up to look just like a magnificent, desirable rose. You met the narcissist, not to be ultimately, irrevocably destroyed by them, but rather to be courageously, uncomfortably confronted with the final, most challenging test of your deepest held illusions. It was a spiritual curriculum designed by your own soul. You had to see, with your own clear, awakened eyes, how your gentle, accommodating silence was so consistently misinterpreted as willing agreement or compliance. You had to experience how your boundless, innate compassion was tragically mistaken for weak-willed submission, and you had to feel, in your own pained heart, how your genuine, selfless kindness was systematically, almost clinically, exploited for their gain, for their control. And here is the truth that often stings like salt in a fresh wound. The truth that can be so difficult yet so necessary to embrace. You were never, ever meant to fix them. You were not placed in their life as their personal savior, their healer, their therapist. In this profound karmic play, you were placed in their life, in that specific, challenging dynamic, so that you could finally, unequivocally, with profound clarity, outgrow your own deeply held, often painful, illusions about love, about worthiness, and about the true source of your own power. Their role was to be the unyielding catalyst. Your role was to awaken. Karma, in this light, is not the universe being cruel. It is the universe, with infinite, sometimes painful, compassion, offering you the gift of profound, liberating clarity. Lesson 3. Compassion without wisdom is a deceptive, self-imposed trap. The spiritual path, as taught in the serene wisdom of Zen, is not about extremes. It is always about finding the middle path, that delicate, ever-shifting, ever-mindful balance between the open, feeling heart and the clear, discerning mind. Compassion, in its purest, most unadulterated form, is indeed sacred. It is a beautiful, essential quality, a hallmark of an awakened, enlightened being. But, and this is a crucial distinction that this experience often comes to teach us, compassion, when offered without the accompanying, protective sword of clear-seeing wisdom, can swiftly, almost inevitably, become a sticky, entangling net, and you, with the very best and noblest of intentions, are often the one who ends up hopelessly tangled within it. When you stayed in their often chaotic orbit, perhaps endlessly forgiving their transgressions, endlessly hoping against all evidence for a miraculous change that never came, endlessly giving of your time, your energy, your very soul until you were utterly depleted. You weren't necessarily being noble. As you may have told yourself, with the clarity of hindsight, you can now see that, perhaps, you were simply being temporarily blind, your vision clouded by an undiscerning, boundless empathy that lacked the protection of wise boundaries. A person with strong narcissistic tendencies often, almost instinctively, survives and thrives on the abundant emotional and energetic generosity of those who, by their nature, bleed easily, who give freely from an open, often unguarded, heart. In this way, they become, paradoxically, unwitting Zen masters of a particularly painful kind, teaching one of the hardest, most vital truths in all of the Dharma, that even love, even the most profound compassion, must have sacred, unshakable boundaries, that empathy, when consistently offered without discernment, can, and often will, be twisted and used as a weapon against you. Your beautiful, spiritual heart was meant to open, to expand, to connect, to radiate love, not to endlessly, unsustainably leak your precious, finite life force into a bottomless, ungrateful void. The narcissist, through their often painful and confusing interactions, mercilessly, yet ultimately mercifully, revealed to you the precise places where your own compassion had no healthy boundaries, no sacred, self-honoring limits. They forced you, often through repeated, agonizing cycles of hope and disillusionment, to finally, with a weary heart, ask the soul-searching, life-altering question, where does genuine, heartfelt kindness truly end, and where does insidious, soul-destroying self-betrayal begin? The answer to that question, though perhaps agonizing to accept at first, likely grew louder and clearer with every lonely tear you cried for someone who never offered a sincere, heartfelt apology, with every time you found yourself desperately trying to justify their inexplicable rage or chilling indifference as somehow being your fault. With every moment you desperately tried to call the dynamic love, while deep in your bones, you felt the cold, unmistakable tremor of fear. Please hear this. That dawning awareness, that painful, gut-wrenching clarity was not a sign of your weakness or your failure. It was, in fact, the undeniable, courageous, and beautiful beginning of your profound awakening. Lesson 4. You were never, ever meant to heal them. One of the most common, most painful, and most fundamental errors that genuinely kind-hearted, deeply empathetic souls often make is the deeply ingrained, often romanticized, belief that their love alone, in its sheer intensity and unwavering purity, possesses the miraculous power to transform, to heal, to save another person from themselves. But Zen, with its characteristic, often bracing, directness, reminds us of a fundamental truth. Lasting, authentic transformation always, without exception, requires conscious intention and dedicated effort from the one who seeks to transform. It cannot be imposed from the outside, no matter how loving the external source. It requires more than just passive exposure to another's light. You were not placed in their life as their designated healer, their personal therapist, or their instrument of spiritual redemption. You were, perhaps, simply meant to be their mirror, a clear, honest, unwavering reflection of their own inner state, their own unexamined shadows, their own unhealed wounds. And what did they typically do when confronted with that clear, honest reflection? Often, they attempted to shatter it, to discredit it, to destroy it. Why? Because, as painful as it is to accept, some people simply do not want to see who they really are. They don't crave the often uncomfortable journey of self-reflection. They crave the fleeting comfort of constant, unconditional admiration. They don't truly want to be witnessed in their raw, imperfect wholeness. They desperately want to be worshipped in their carefully constructed, often illusory, grandeur. Here is a profound truth to embrace. You were never broken by them. It was, more often than not, your innate, authentic light that inadvertently, yet powerfully, exposed their internal fractures, their hidden insecurities, and in return, through their often defensive and hurtful reactions to your light, they taught you a profound, almost paradoxical lesson about the nature of radiance itself. Even the most brilliant, life-giving sunlight can feel intensely, unbearably painful to eyes that have known only the dim, accustomed comfort of darkness. Your light, your love, your kindness was never the problem. Their inability or unwillingness to receive it was. Your role was never to heal them. It was to shine so brightly that you were finally forced to heal yourself. Lesson 5. The narcissist is your final, most rigorous spiritual exam before true, profound liberation can dawn in your life, before you can step fully and confidently into your own sovereign power. That final, most tenacious, most deeply rooted illusion within you must finally, completely fall, and this ultimate illusion, surprisingly, is not really about the narcissists themselves. It's not about their behavior, their motives, their impact, or their ultimate fate. It is, far more crucially, about that deeply buried, often unacknowledged, part of you that still, on some subtle level, mistakenly believes that you are only truly worthy, only truly valuable, only truly lovable when you are chosen, when you are validated, when you are approved of by someone outside of yourself. The profound teachings of Buddhism illuminate that our suffering ultimately ends not when our external life circumstances magically change to our liking, but rather when our mind, our own perception, undergoes the radical, fundamental transformation. The narcissist, in reality, did not and could not truly chain you. More often than not, if we are to be radically honest with ourselves, we, in our own unhealed, fearful state, unconsciously handed him the very key to our own silence, to our own diminishment, to the very cage they then seemed to lock us in. We often allowed the painful cycle of hope and disappointment to continue, sometimes for far too long, because the deeper, more primal fear relentlessly haunted our inner landscape, the profound, often terrifying, fear of being truly alone, of being ultimately unchosen. of being fundamentally unseen and unloved by another. They were not the storm itself, though their presence surely felt like a hurricane. They were, more accurately, the dramatic, often terrifying, and loud echo of your own unhealed wound. The deep, tender wound within you that was crying out, desperately, for your own attention, for your own compassion, for your own dedicated, loving healing. And so, the universe, in its infinite, often inscrutable, and deeply compassionate wisdom, sent them into your path, not as your destined soulmate to complete you, but rather as your most challenging, most revealing soul mirror. They came not to make you whole, for you were, in truth, already whole beneath your wounds. They came, rather, to courageously, unflinchingly expose to you what you, and only you, must lovingly, patiently complete within yourself. This grueling exam, though perhaps the most arduous you have ever faced, carries within its challenging curriculum the very seeds of your greatest, most profound liberation, if you but have the courage to see it, to embrace it, and to learn from it. Lesson 6. Silence is the undeniable beginning of freedom. There is a beautiful Zen saying, when there's nothing left to grasp, the hands, at last, become free. Think about the moment your dynamic with the narcissist truly ended. It likely wasn't because you suddenly had enough in a fit of rage or reached a final breaking point of drama. More often, the true departure, the inner departure, happened in a moment of profound, almost deafening, quiet clarity. You left, not necessarily because you were overflowing with strength, but because you finally, with a soul-deep exhaustion, saw the unadorned truth. They didn't magically change. They simply, through their consistent, unchanging behavior, finally exhausted all of your illusions about them. And in that quiet, often heartbreaking, moment of stark realization, your own silence, which they may have once used against you, suddenly transformed into your most powerful, most effective sword. You stop the exhausting practice of explaining yourself, of justifying your feelings, of trying to make them understand. You stop defending your insanity against their gaslighting. You stopped, once and for all, sacrificing vital pieces of yourself, bleeding out your emotional energy, just to try and prove to them, and to yourself, that you were alive, that you mattered, and that newfound stillness, that quiet, resolute turning away, it wasn't an act of surrender to them. It was, in fact, the beginning of a profound, glorious internal revolution, a revolution of self-reclamation, of returning home to the quiet, unshakable sanctuary of your own being. Lesson 7. The true awakening happens after the narcissist. The real, transformative journey, you see, doesn't truly begin in the dramatic moment when they physically exit your life. It profoundly begins in that first, quiet, courageous moment when you consciously, intentionally stop viewing yourself through the distorted, often critical, lens. It begins when you stop the incessant, habitual asking of, what do they think of me? Will they approve? Are they angry? And instead, you begin to turn inward and gently, reverently ask, what does my own soul, in its quiet wisdom, whisper to me now? This is when the real healing starts. You begin to honor those bright red flags, those gut feelings you once so desperately, hopefully, tried to paint white. You start to patiently, lovingly rebuild the sacred boundaries that, in the past, you were perhaps conditioned to believe were a form of betrayal to them, but now understand are an act of profound loyalty to yourself. You begin the slow, meticulous, and deeply liberating process of unlearning the toxic lie that genuine love must somehow always equal. All require immense suffering and self-sacrifice, and in the profound, nurturing silence of your own healing, you finally, with a clarity that takes your breath away, hear the undeniable truth. The pain, all of it, had a sacred purpose, and that purpose was to wake you, with a jolt if necessary, from the long, exhausting, suffocating dream of your own unworthiness. But why does this truth, this awakening, often hurts so deeply at first? The real shock, the one that can truly rattle you, isn't ultimately about who they were, about the depths of their dysfunction. The real shock, the one that heralds your true liberation, is the dawning, breathtaking realization of who you truly are without them, powerful, resilient, whole, and free, and that, dear soul, is precisely where the next, most beautiful chapter of your life truly begins. This was never cruelty from the universe. It was, when seen from the highest perspective, karma's mercy, cleverly disguised as chaos. You can see it now, can't you? The path only looked senseless, felt utterly chaotic, when you were in the middle of the searing pain. But in the clear, calm light of hindsight, every single moment, the bewildering confusion, the lonely tears, the gut-wrenching heartbreak, was, in its own mysterious way, pointing you towards something far deeper, far more real. The narcissist was never here to ultimately punish you. They were here to profoundly reflect you, to help burn away the dross of illusion and to show you the indestructible, golden core of your own being, because underneath it all, underneath the pain, the confusion, the self-doubt, you were always the gold. You just didn't know it yet. Lesson 8. You were never weak. You were profoundly deep, in your quietest, most solitary hours. Even now, the old questions might still sometimes echo softly through the chambers of your heart. Why didn't I see it all so much sooner? Why did I choose to stay for so long? Why did I pour so much love into someone who was utterly incapable of truly seeing me? But please, my friend, learn to see these questions not as evidence of lingering regret or as signs of some inherent weakness within you. They are, rather, the gentle, tender whispers from your finally awakening soul. They come not to shame you for the path you walked, but rather to gently, lovingly celebrate just how incredibly far you've come. The Buddha once said that true awakening often arrives through the crucible of fire, not through the easy comfort of a placid life. The philosophy of Zen does not judge the winding, often difficult, path you walked. It deeply, profoundly honors it. Your decision to stay with a narcissistic individual for a time was likely not a flaw in your character. More often, it was a direct reflection of your most beautiful qualities, your unshakable, almost defined, belief in the possibility of transformation in others, your immense, often boundless, capacity to love without demanding a transactional return, your profound, compassionate willingness to give far beyond what was ever expected, or even deserved. But now, something fundamental within you has shifted. Now, a newfound, hard-won wisdom walks patiently, hand in hand, with your innate compassion. You no longer understand the nature of suffering merely from the abstract pages of books or the wise words of others. You understand it now from the deeply etched, sacred pages of your own soul's experience. And let me assure you, the person who courageously walks away from that kind of profound, soul-altering experience is never, ever the same as the one who naively, hopefully entered it. And that, right there, is the beautiful, often overlooked, blessing hidden deep inside the pain. For pain, when met with awareness and courage, carves the soul so very deeply that when true, authentic peace finally arrives, it has the capacity to flood every single corner of your being in ways that a life of mere comfort never, ever could. Lesson 9. How profound suffering becomes a sacred gate to enlightenment. In the timeless teachings of Buddhism, we are beautifully, powerfully told that the exquisite lotus flower, a symbol of purity and enlightenment, can only ever truly grow in the thick, murky mud, without the bewildering confusion you endured, without the pain of the endlessly broken promises, without the insidious gaslighting that made you question your own sanity, without that slow, painful erosion of your trust, you would likely never have come to so deeply recognize, so profoundly appreciate its glorious opposite. Without experiencing the deep, chilling darkness, how could you ever truly, fully appreciate the magnificent, life-giving beauty of the light? Without having to navigate the narcissist's intricate, often exhausting, manipulations, you would likely not have come to so fiercely value the sacred importance of your own healthy boundaries. You would not have learned to hear the profound, healing beauty that resides in your own inner silence. They, in their own wounded, unconscious way, came into your life as the mud, thick, heavy, and at times, almost suffocating, but you, my dear friend, were always meant to be the magnificent lotus. And now, at long last, you have gloriously, beautifully bloomed. Enlightenment, in its essence, is not some mystical, otherworldly blessing bestowed upon a chosen few. It is, quite simply, the deep, direct, experiential understanding of truth. And now, that profound truth lives and breathes inside of you, as part of you. No one, absolutely no one, can ever dim your brilliant, inner light, unless you first, consciously or unconsciously, hand him the switch. And guess what? You've finally, courageously, powerfully taken it back. Lesson 10. The liberating power of walking away without hatred. Zen, in its profound, practical wisdom, does not teach us to seek revenge upon those who have wronged us. For revenge only serves to perpetuate the painful cycle of suffering, binding us ever more tightly to the very person and pain we wish to escape. Instead, it gently, yet firmly, teaches us the liberating, soul-freeing art of letting go. Releasing the narcissist from your psychic and emotional space is not just the closing of a painful, difficult chapter in the book of your life. It is, more profoundly, the complete and utter disintegration of a powerful, long-held illusion. But please, understand this crucial distinction: the real, lasting liberation doesn't just come from the physical act of leaving them. It comes, most powerfully, from the internal act of no longer carrying any hatred, any bitterness, any resentment towards them in your heart. For hatred, in its own insidious, corrosive way, binds us to another just as tightly, just as painfully, as unhealthy attachment ever could. And so, you consciously, courageously release that bitterness, not for their sake, not because they necessarily deserve your forgiveness or your peace. You release it for you, not because they have earned your peace, but because you have finally, unequivocally, earned your own. The violent storm that once raged inside you has, at last, settled into a serene calm. You no longer burn with that desperate, agonizing desire to be finally, fully understood by them. You no longer yearn for them to at long last see and acknowledge your intrinsic worth. And why? Because now, with the clear, unwavering eyes of self-love and self-awareness, you see it. You truly, deeply see it for yourself, and walking away in this profound state of inner peace, free from the heavy, burdensome shackles of resentment, is not an act of retreat. It is, in fact, the final, most triumphant act of profound self-mastery. Lesson 11. The unexpected gifts the narcissist taught your soul. It's a strange and often uncomfortable paradox, isn't it? That the very person who was the catalyst for the most profound pain you may have ever experienced, also, in a very real, albeit unintentional way, delivered to you some of the most powerful, life-altering lessons your soul could ever receive. Through their actions, they taught you, in a way that no book or lecture ever could, that your personal boundaries are absolutely, unequivocally sacred. They showed you, with stark, undeniable clarity, that what often masquerades as love, but is devoid of genuine respect, is, in fact, just a sophisticated, often painful, form of manipulation. They forced you to learn that your precious, innate empathy must be fiercely protected, especially from those who would so readily twist it into a weapon to be used against you. They demonstrated, through their own performative nature, that quiet, authentic presence is infinitely more powerful than any loud, empty performance, and they taught you, perhaps most profoundly, that your own inner silence often speaks with a clarity and a truth that shouting, pleading, or arguing ever could. You see now, with the 2020 vision of hindsight, that they were never your personal project to fix. You were never meant to be their cure. Your true, sacred purpose in that dynamic was something far greater, far more self-focused. It was to become, through the crucible of that experience, so profoundly, so unshakably yourself, that you would become utterly unfixable by them. Your purpose was to rise, to grow so far beyond the reach of their illusions, that their shadows could no longer touch your light. Your purpose was to reclaim yourself, fully, completely, and unapologetically. Lesson 12. You were not broken. You were powerfully reconstructed. Please, let this truth sink into the deepest parts of your being. What you once thought, in the depths of your despair, was your absolute breakdown, was really, from a higher, soul-level perspective, your ultimate breakthrough. What seemed and felt like utter, complete devastation was actually, in a very real sense, a sacred clearing, a painful but necessary process of clearing out old, limiting beliefs, outdated patterns, and unhealed wounds, all to make fertile space for a newer, truer, more authentic version of you that had been patiently waiting to emerge all along. Now, as you stand in the aftermath, you find that you trust your own quiet intuition more than you could ever trust anyone's superficial charm. You now recognize, almost instantly, the crucial difference between the open-hearted giving of genuine love and the anxious grasping of desperate need. And your heart, your very being, no longer frantically chases after external validation. Instead, it radiates the profound, captivating, and deeply peaceful stillness. You finally, liberatingly, realize that you do not need closure from them. In your own healing, in your own courageous act of reclaiming your life and your truth, you are the closure you no longer feel the need to speak of, or even entertain thoughts of, revenge, because your own hard-won, unwavering inner peace now speaks with a volume and a power that is infinitely louder, infinitely more resonant than anything they could ever possibly say or do. The narcissist, they were, in the grand spiritual play of your life, a potent, necessary spiritual trigger. In the philosophy of Zen, an illusion is simply anything that hides or obscures the clear, radiant light of truth. The narcissist was, undoubtedly, a master illusion maker, but paradoxically, through their very actions, they also, inadvertently, revealed your deepest truth to you. By showing you so clearly what love is not, they powerfully, unforgettably led you on the path to discovering what real, authentic self-love truly feels like. By creating and thriving in chaos, they taught you to deeply, profoundly value the sacred sanctuary of your own inner calm. By strategically withdrawing their conditional affection, they showed you the profound, empowering strength of no longer begging for acceptance. By consistently manipulating you, they inadvertently, yet masterfully, sharpened your own innate insight and discernment to a razor's edge, and by ultimately discarding you, or forcing you to leave, they unwillingly, yet providentially, forced you inward to the only place where true, lasting, unshakable healing could ever begin. And here is the truth that, even now, may still take your breath away with its profound, almost shocking, simplicity. You thought they came into your life to break you. But from this awakened perspective, you can now see they actually came to awaken you, because sometimes, my friend, the very one who so painfully reopens your deepest, most tender wounds is also, in a great cosmic paradox, the very one who reveals to you exactly where your greatest, most magnificent power peacefully, patiently sleeps. Let them go. with compassion, with understanding, with a heart that is finally, beautifully free, though, with a quiet, knowing reverence to the incredibly difficult, yet invaluable, lesson they were a catalyst for. And then, with your head held high and your spirit light, rise and walk forward, lighter, wiser, and more magnificently, authentically whole than you have ever been before. This journey, this profound exploration into the heart of a challenging, often devastating, relationship, ultimately reveals itself not as a story of damage, but as a story of discovery. It's a testament to the incredible resilience of the human spirit and the universe's often mysterious, yet always compassionate, ways of guiding us back to ourselves. What begins as a painful entanglement with another ends as a sacred reunion with your own authentic power, your own unwavering worth, your own indestructible light. You were never a victim in a random tragedy. You were a soul undergoing a powerful, necessary initiation. You were never broken. You were, and are now, beautifully, powerfully becoming. This was not the universe's cruelty. This was, in its deepest sense, karma's profound, transformative mercy. If this message, this sacred reframing of pain into power, has spoken directly to your heart today, if it has validated your journey and ignited a flame of recognition within your soul, then we passionately, wholeheartedly implore you, do not let this moment of empowerment fade. This is more than just a video you've watched. It's a profound acknowledgement of your own strength, your own resilience, your own magnificent journey of awakening. Subscribe now and become an essential, cherished part of a vibrant global community that is courageously walking this path of healing, of truth, and of self-reclamation. Together, by subscribing, you are not just getting more content, you are making a powerful, resonant declaration to yourself and to the universe. I am no longer a victim of my story. I am the author of my healing. I am ready to fully embody the wisdom I have earned. Click that subscribe button with the full force of your awakened spirit, and be absolutely certain to ring that notification bell, because every new piece of wisdom we share is a stepping stone on our collective path. And we want you right there with us, every step of the way. And now, we turn to you, your voice, your story, your wisdom is what breathes life into this community. Please, share your own profound reflections in the comments below. What single lesson from this journey resonated most deeply with you? What truth did you need to hear today? Your story of survival, of thriving, of awakening, could be the very beacon of hope that another soul, perhaps reading these comments in a moment of despair, desperately needs to see. Let this be a testament to our collective rising. Until we meet again, we honor you. Keep walking the sacred path of your own truth. You are not broken, you are, and will always, becoming. We look forward to seeing you, in all your radiant wholeness, in the next video.